Hello, I'm Robert Griffin, the Executive Minister here at the Sunshine Cathedral in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I want to thank you for joining us for worship via the internet today. And if you are ever in the Fort Lauderdale area, let me personally invite you to stop by and worship with us on Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:30 a.m. We also invite you to join us on our Facebook group or follow us on Twitter. But for this moment, let's go inside and see what exciting worship opportunity lay in store for us.
Of Marianne Williamson. There is always more to any situation than meets the eye. Every person carries within them the seed of God, and every aspect of time and space carries the potential for miraculous unfoldment. It is not what is happening on the outside, but how we view it from the inside that determines our grace within any situation and the joy that we can derive from it. In these human words, God's voice is heard.
Our second reading is a reading from the 1 Kings. Ahab told Jezebel that Elijah had killed all of her prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "I swear by my gods to see you put to death." Then he was afraid. He got up and fled for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah. He left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a solitary broom tree. He asked that he might die. "Is it enough now, O God? Take my life." Then he lay down under the broom tree and fell asleep. Suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, "Get up and eat." He looked, and there at his head was a cake baked on a hot stone and a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. The angel came a second time, touched him and said, "Get up and eat, otherwise the journey will be too much for you." He got up and he ate and drank. Then he went on this strength of the food for 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. At that place he came to a cave and spent the night there. Then God's message came to Elijah saying, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, When you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael, the king over Aram. In these human words, God's voice is heard.
Well, today's worship takes us at week 6 of our 9-week sermon series. And sermon topics have been based on the book Convictions, a manifesto for progressive Christians by Marcus Borg. And our series title has been What It Means to Be a Christian. And today our topic focuses specifically on biblical challenges to the status quo. Now, people who read the Bible do so for many different reasons. Some read it to find comfort in times of discomfort. Others may read it for spiritual insight or for personal justification of a particular social or political view. Some use it as a weapon, a means of condemning certain people or behaviors. And some use it as a rallying cry to go to war. So others read it for a look into ancient history. And some read the Bible as if it were a crystal ball, helping to predict the future. Now, within the Bible being used for so many different purposes, it is no wonder that we have so many views of what it says and what people think it actually means. Now, as a child growing up in a missionary Baptist church in Alabama, that wonderful, wonderful state, talk about politics and social stuff going on, but the wonderful state of Alabama, much of my awareness of the Bible was based squarely in the roots of social justice. The likes of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman, Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Gardner Taylor were among the greats, preaching a social justice gospel, declaring God's love for all people. And I took their messages to heart. Now, in those days, my exposure to theology was pretty limited to local preachers and to the luminaries I just mentioned and to Baptist men, because back then there were no Baptist women preachers, or much less any other kind of women preachers in the great state of Alabama. So we look at all of that in the context of what is this all about? So as time went on, my cloud of witnesses expanded. It expanded to include people like the Episcopal Reverend Canon Ed Rodman, a professor and a mentor of mine from seminary, the presiding bishop-elect of the Episcopal Church, Michael Curry, and our wonderful Bishop Barbara Harris, the first woman bishop in the Worldwide Anglican Communion, AME Bishop Fatasha McKenzie, the first woman bishop in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright, the former pastor of Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago, the Reverend Dr. Jim Forbes, the former pastor of Riverside Church in New York City, and finally Bishop Yvette Flunder, founder of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries. So I continue to be influenced by the voices of the Black church experience calling for justice, equality, peace, healing, and prophetic action. These great preachers found in the Bible a witness to God's all-inclusive love and a call for ongoing positive changes in our world. Changing the world means changing the body politic, that is the larger community, and that is political by nature. It isn't necessarily partisanship, and churches cannot and should not officially endorse parties or candidates, but we can urge the faithful to support programs, private and governmental, that are meant to feed the hungry, minister to the sick, care for the elderly, save our natural resources, and protect the rights of all people. As our senior minister has said many times, such an agenda of caring for all people and affirming the dignity of all people is what Jesus called the kingdom, or the kingdom of God. And it was considered a political message as much as a spiritual one, and for that, he was killed. So to talk about Jesus is to challenge the status quo as he did. And to challenge the status quo will also be considered to be somewhat political. Now, there are some who would say, I don't want my church to talk about politics. I don't want my church to talk about justice matters or the social concerns of today. I just want them to teach the Bible, to preach about Jesus, hold hands, and sing Kumbaya. Well, I have some news for you today. To talk about the Bible and Jesus and community means you want to make a difference. You want to be an agent of positive change, and that, like Jesus' ministry, will be considered political. We will never campaign for one party or a candidate over the other, though as individuals we certainly have our favorites, and we will always speak out for the marginalized, the oppressed, the forgotten, the abused, the have-nots. We will speak out for those Jesus called least among these, and that will mean challenging church, government, community, and individuals to care more and to share more. We are not only pray for the oppressed, but try to do something about the systems that keep people down rather than lifting them up. That's what Jesus did. So if you want to learn about Jesus, you're going to learn about how we are meant, like him, to be about God's business. The business of helping, the business of lifting up, the business of encouraging and liberating the so-called least among these. So to say I am a follower of the teachings of Jesus is to be political. It is to be someone who wants to break the status quo. To say I'm a Christian is to be political, not because a certain form of Christianity should dominate government, and it should not, but because to be Christian is to follow Jesus, and to follow Jesus is to work to include those who have been left behind and to improve the lots of the least of those that have been denigrated by political endeavors, and it is also a spiritual endeavor. Some of us call ourselves liberals, others conservative. Some of us will want to be into the thick of things. Some of us will want to be into the thicks of everything. Some of us want to be into the heavy thicks of everything. Some of us want to be in it so thickly that we get stuck with being thick ourselves, but we want to be in the mix of everything that's going on. And then there are others who will want to quietly support good efforts without drawing attention to ourselves. But whatever our personal politics, our faith must be about lifting up others, seeing the dignity in all people. And that will influence how we engage the world of politics. Whatever our political ideologies may be, let them be grounded in the spiritual conviction that love is supreme and that we must do unto others as we would have others do unto us. Markerborg says it best. Not every Christian is called to be an activist, but all are called to take seriously God's dream for a more just and nonviolent world. Religion is always political. The religious pacifists who say we should never go to war, that's a spiritual motivated call to action in the world of politics. Those who would use religion to oppose women's rights or marriage equality, they are using religion to influence how they engage politics. And if we think that God's all-inclusive love calls us to refute their message, then that puts us into the political fray. It is simply not possible to be religious and non-political. If we have faithful conviction, that will motivate how we live in society and how we engage society. And that by itself is natural and is also political. The Crusades of the Middle Ages, the Inquisition, the religious wars of the 16th century that followed the Reformation, those were all religious people engaging in politics. Even slavery, Jim Crow, colonization, The trail of tears were justified, if not motivated, by religious views. And those who challenged those unjust campaigns were also motivated by religious views. Dr. King's faith led him to challenge oppression, change the world, and give his life for the sake of others. His faith caused him to challenge the political protected status quo, and his spirituality was in fact political as well as engaged spiritually. Now, for those who haven't guessed, I am a minister. Otherwise, I wouldn't run around dressed like this. But I'm also a veteran, and I have served God and country. And in my mind, they were not two different vocations. And those experiences motivated me to prefer peace to war, to value every mother's son and every father's daughter, and to not want any blood spilt in the name of religion ever again. Now, that is my religious view, and it speaks out, and when it's spoken out loud, it is a political act. But the two simply cannot be separated. To recognize and atone for the genocide of the indigenous people of this continent is both spiritual and political. It is also a moral necessity. To see immigration as a human issue and to respond to the issue with compassion is both spiritual and political. It is also a moral necessity. To say that we can no longer destroy our planet for the sake of profit is both political and spiritual, and it is also a moral necessity. To express regret and outrage when protected species are targeted and hunted for sport is both spiritual and political, and it is also a moral necessity. To work to end the horror of human trafficking is both spiritual and political, and it is also a moral necessity. And this work is at least as old as our sacred stories. From Moses telling Pharaoh, "Let my people go," to Jesus declaring a realm of God where all people have value, the Bible is a story of challenging the status quo. So we're not doing anything new here today. We're just carrying the story on. Call it religious, call it political, but notice that it is the biblical message, and let's recommit to challenging the status quo ourselves. Now, gays can get married, but also be fired or denied housing for being gay, and that has to change. Women are often judged by their appearances rather than by their skills. That has to change. The poor are blamed for their plight rather than being offered real help. That has to change. Not everyone's hard work is valued today, and that has to change. The proposed answer to conflict is too often, "Let's go to war," and that certainly has to change. Black bodies are routinely shot in our streets, and that has to change. Black Lives Matter, and it is a shame that we have to remind our nation of that fact in 2015. Now, just so you don't hear the angry black man, let me say that more pastorally. Black bodies are routinely shot in our streets, and that has to change. Black Lives Matters. Black Lives Matter, and it is a shame that in 2015, we have to remind our nation of that very fact. And if we read the Bible and follow Jesus, then we will continue to challenge the status quo because more change is needed and our work is not yet done. We need to continue to speak about the integration of sexuality and spirituality. We need to continue to speak about the fluidity of gender. We need to continue to speak about marriage equality. It may be the law of the land, but it is far from being universally embraced. We need to continue to address women's sovereignty over their own bodies. Whether we agree or not on women's choices, we cannot take their choices from them, so let's get the church in the state out of women's uterus. We need to establish economic justice because everyone deserves fair wages, adequate housing, health care, and education. If we want to be doers of the word and not just hearers only, if we want to be followers of Jesus and not just admirers of Jesus, then we must be willing to continue to challenge the status quo, and that begins today and not tomorrow, right here and right now. Following Jesus, our way sure, comes with a responsibility to do unto others as we would have them to do unto us. Sunshine Cathedral, we don't argue much about Jesus. We're too busy trying to follow him, and following the teachings of Jesus means challenging the status quo and sharing hope with the world because we have work to do. We are, as Borg said, called to take seriously God's dream for a more just and nonviolent world. That is all. And after all, that is what it means to be Christians and willing to challenge the status quo. So I want to know today, are you ready and willing to challenge the status quo? Yeah. Are you ready and willing to make a difference today? Yeah. Are you ready and willing to make a difference in our community? Yeah. Are you ready and willing to make a difference in our world? Then you are the change that we have been waiting for. And this is the good news. Amen. Thank you for joining us today here at the Sunshine Cathedral. If you're ever in the Fort Lauderdale area, we invite you to stop by and worship with us on Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:30 a.m. If you'd like to make a donation to the Sunshine Cathedral, or if you'd like to find out other resources that the Cathedral has to offer, please visit us at www.sunshinecathedral.org. Until the next time, we look forward to seeing you here at the Sunshine Cathedral.